It's about what you know. It's about where you go. If you really want to know, it's the Leo Larry Show. It's about what you know. It's about where you go. If you really want to know, it's the Leo Larry Show.
Hello, once again, friends, and welcome to this week's episode of the Leo and Larry Show. I'm Leo.
And I'm Larry.
And this week we don't have a special guest. It's just going to be the two of us just bouncing issues back and forth, issues that are very important to you and Larry. I think the issue we really want to talk about is the upcoming midterm election.
The most single election, probably most important election in the history of the United States, maybe.
Wow.
When we talk about what's at stake here, we talk about the challenges, we talk about the opportunities as well, and that we stand in America at a crossroads, and what Gil Scott-Heron called Winter in America.
Winter in America. That's one of my favorite songs, but basically he's saying that, all our leaders have been killed, our healers have been run out of positions of power or the country, and that people don't know what to say and they don't know what to do anymore because it's winter in America.
Well, I think for Gil Scott and for some of the great philosophers and some of the great activists of our time, I think the challenge basically was, in a lot of cases, they got it right. In a lot of cases, they got it wrong. In some cases, they got it wrong, I should say. Basically, winter in America, it's like when Gil Scott said the revolution will not be televised. Well, they televise it every day. The challenge is who's listening and who's manipulating those telecasts. And the challenge basically is that we have a situation where, for lack of people being able to listen, for lack of people being able to be concerned, there seems to be an apathy in our community, an apathy that could very well control the results of this election and make sure that conservatives in America have the opportunity to have complete control of America, and that cannot and will not be good to have a handful of people, a few extremists, I should say, having control of America and control of American politics and the control of American spending as it relates to government and government relations with the community.
So that's one of the challenges where people are saying, Gil Scott again, that people don't know what to say, they don't know what to do because of the communications, the media, the fact that, like you used the word extremist. Well, the Republican conservatives talk about the woke movement and young people and the things that they're talking about, sexual orientation, those sort of things as being extreme. And the Democrats, on the other hand, talk about things like the repealing of Roe versus Wade and other things like that, anti-unionism, et cetera, as being the extreme. So the main issue, I think that's at the ballot box right now is, what does democracy look like in America? Or will there be any democracy in America? And that's what when you say the most important one in history, it's like this is literally a debate in terms of how our country will run, what rights will be recognized, what rights will be denied. You agree?
Well, I think it goes a little further than that, Reverend Woodbury. And I think the challenge basically is that we're talking about what democracy looks like in America and who controls what democracy looks like in America. ABC, NBC, CBS, and the New York Times and the Washington Post. Who's defining what democracy looks like in America? That's the biggest challenge. Everybody who has turned on the television in the last 20 years know that democracy in America is basically propped up by corporate America.
Mhm.
And so America goes to where the way corporate America wants them to go. The challenge basically is that the influence seems to get greater year by year instead of lessening. And so instead of you having real options and real choices, billions upon billions upon billions are being pushed into political campaigns. And that is changing the texture, and that is changing the fiber of America. You know, there's nothing wrong, absolutely nothing wrong with capitalism. I'm a capitalist myself.
Mhm.
But as Angela Davis said in a speech I heard last week, she said, you know, you can't have capitalism without exploitation. Somebody has to be exploited. I mean, if I make $40 billion this year, and I'm Jeff Bezos, and I make $40 billion this year, how many people did I have to exploit to get that?
Mhm.
Did I pay a living wage? Did I pay health care? Did I pay the things that these people need to have a comfortable life on their own? No, I'm not supposed to make them rich, but they should be able to live a comfortable life without being able to have to go on welfare in order to live a comfortable life. And I think that's the difference between uh, the capitalist model of some individuals in America and the capitalist model in general as it relates. Because there's nothing wrong with capitalism as long as it includes livable circumstances for the workers.
Mhm.
Because there are going to be workers and there are going to be owners. That's the reality. But I think the challenge basically is when you start controlling the elections so that you can control the economics of the community and you can control the politicians in the community. And then you add to that a conservative arm of the Republican Party that by any means necessary, I'm going to be reelected. I'm going to control the economy, and I don't care. You know, we talked earlier about Nancy Pelosi's husband and the challenge with Nancy Pelosi's husband, and how either some Republicans are silent on somebody coming into a man's house and attacking him, and they are silent, or they are making excuses. Oh well, you know, for instance, I heard a silly excuse that said, "Well, that really wasn't what happened. What happened was the guy was his lover, and and Nancy Pelosi's husband was gay, and there was a lover's quarrel
Mhm.
between them."
That was after the guy admitted to.
And then again, that was after the guy admitted to the fact that he came there to break Nancy Pelosi's kneecaps. That's what he said. That was his public statement. And he was sitting there waiting on her to come home so he could do that.
Mhm.
And he admitted to everything that was negative and all the charges that he was charged with. So the reality of it is, but for some reason, the conservatives are in denial, just like they're in denial about January 6th situation. And in reality, and I kind of wonder out loud, the voters and the people that are out there trying to vote now, and the people who have to vote on Tuesday, do they understand the relevance of all of this? You know, last week I think the Supreme Court was talking about affirmative action,
Mhm.
and then they were talking about they're debating affirmative action, and because we know the lean of the court, you can almost guarantee that in some way that affirmative action, if not disappear completely, is going to be watered down. You know, that's almost a guarantee. So when you talk about the things that people are doing to win
Mhm.
in America, win at any cost, you know, we used to hear those things, but we never heard them as extreme as we hear them today. And so whether it's black voters or whether it's white voters or whether it's Hispanic voters or whether it's Native American voters, everybody needs to be aware of what the consequences of this election can be.
Right, and so two things come to mind, and it's like So first, Mussolini, who Adolf Hitler and others looked at as the father of fascism, described fascism as the government, corporations, and the military coming together. Then President Dwight Eisenhower, who was the supreme commander in Europe and Africa during World War II, his last speech as he left office as president, he said, beware the military-industrial complex. In other words, both of them, two men who fought on opposite sides of World War II, Mussolini, who was the dictator of Italy, and Dwight D. Eisenhower, who was over the supreme commander for World War II in Europe and Africa, who later became our president. Both of them are saying, watch out when corporations get together with governments and the military. And so one of the things that we're seeing ever since the Citizens United was held up by the court saying that corporations can give as much money as they want to political campaigns. Where we are now is that we have corporations controlling stuff. And I'll go one step further with that we have corporations now that are controlling our media. And so you're getting, if you turn to CNN, you get one spin. If you turn to Fox, you get another spin. MSNBC, another spin on the same story. And so definitely people need to realize that if their voices are not heard, if they're not electing people to come into office who aren't tied up in this complex, with corporations, etc., on either side of the aisle, then we're going to have people who are getting spin on the news, no matter what channel that they look.
Well, you look at the media, and I think there's room to be concerned. But I think for most large media companies, especially, they're in survival mode. Mm-hmm. As the media climate changes, and as the opportunities change for media, CBS, ABC, and NBC are not as in control as they were 10 years ago. They're not, and when I say they're not in control, you can laugh at Facebook, and you can laugh at Twitter, and you can laugh at all of the social media platforms. But at the end of the day, I think the last number I saw for Facebook was $80 billion a year. Mm-hmm. And that number has not dropped substantially over the last couple of years. So they are making more money. For instance, Facebook is making more money than ABC, NBC, and CBS combined. And so there's that competitiveness. How do I compete in that environment? And how do I still convince corporate America that some level of their dollars need to still come to me as an advertising vehicle? And the answer to that is, I'm going as an advertiser, I'm going where I'm going to get the best bang for my buck, and I'm going to get the best return on my investment. And so now that leaves ABC and NBC and CBS looking around and saying, and Fox as well, it leaves them looking around and saying, what can I do to boost my image in the community? What can I do to be more relevant to community? And I think Fox had, we don't like Fox.
And where's my niche?
Where's
my niche? So if I have these people on the right, as they call it, who will listen to my station and buy the products advertised, and then on the other, and that's Fox, and then you have CNN on the other side say, our niche are the Democrats and the so-called progressives in the Democratic Party, and they'll watch us and they'll buy the products that are advertised on our station. That's what you're saying, right?
Well, I'm saying that, but I'm saying, see, here's the thing. Tiffany Cross was pretty much terminated this week from NBC, from a Saturday morning show on NBC. And they guess, because nobody can come up with the real fact that why she was terminated, the guesses that she was terminated for some commentary that she made.
Mhm.
And I wasn't, I was a fan. She's a beautiful sister with a beautiful spirit. But I wasn't somebody who got up on Saturday morning and watched Tiffany Cross. You know, like happened to come across, I came across her. But at the end of the day, it's censorship that is being put into the process. And the reality of the situation is that on cable television, especially, and you're talking about CNN being on cable television, you're talking about NBC being on cable television, talking about some Fox News being on cable television, and even CBS News having a presence on cable television as well. The reality of it basically is that, remember the program that used to be on BET called The Game?
Yeah.
Remember that game?
Mhm.
It broke the model for cable television viewership. Their show, the second season show, when it came on the air, it had 7 million viewers. Nobody had ever heard of 7 million viewers on cable television.
Mhm.
That's how good they were. So when you look at CNN and you look at Ox and you look at all these other guys, they are getting, even Tiffany Cross was lucky to get 50,000 people to watch her show on Saturday morning. And that's the reality, because nobody's basically just tuning in for the news. Reverend Al Sharpton will probably tell you the same thing about his show at 5 o'clock on Saturday evening, that who's home at 5 o'clock on Saturday evening watching Al Sharpton. You know, so the reality of it is their numbers are not there. And so they can't charge the premium they would charge. What was the guy that got, the first guy that got fired from Fox? What's his name? O'Reilly. O'Reilly had 4 million people watching his show. And he had every major advertiser from Mercedes to anybody else that you could imagine advertising on his show. And I think what our community and what most communities don't consider about media in general is, yeah, we're here to tell a story. We're here to tell your story. But we cannot do that without corporate support. We cannot do that without somebody spending some money with us and buying some advertising with us. And so the reality of it is, how do you balance those two things? How do you balance advertising versus editorial? You can be a rebel, and I think I honestly believe, and people may disagree with me, but I honestly believe that Fox has it right. And Fox said, okay, this is my niche over here, and it's conservatives, and this is who we're gonna cater to, and we're not gonna worry about being extreme, and we're not gonna worry about whatever. We're gonna cater to this group, and this is gonna be my niche. And they take it at the heart, and they work on that. And what was their motto, clear and honest or something like that. But anyhow, they believe that the audience that they're targeting, and they don't care if you're a liberal and you don't watch their show. They don't care if you're moderate and you don't watch their show. They are going after a specific segment of the community, and that particular segment of the community is those people who are conservatives, and in a lot of cases, those people who are hardline.
Right.
But because they get in the numbers, corporate America is coming to them and buying advertising. I don't know, and I wouldn't say that corporate America agrees with them on 90% of what they do.
No,
but they're looking for a return on investment.
They try to sell cars.
They're just trying to sell soap. Exactly. They're trying to sell soap. And the reality of that is that, so, you know, voters, as you go to the poll.
That's what I was going to say. No wonder the voters are confused when they're hearing when they're hearing the same story interpreted different ways on different news channels.
Well, it's interpreted in different ways, and that's one of my pet peeves, Reverend Woodbury. And it is that, first of all, I don't need anybody to interpret the news for me. You know, you tell me what news is, I'll decide how I perceive it and how I live by it. You know what I'm saying? I don't need you to tell it. And I think when you get journalists, the first thing they teach you in journalism 101 is, don't become a part of your story.
Mhm.
But stay away from being a part of your story. Let the story speak for itself. And you want to be neutral.
Mhm.
But when you got all of these
Talking head,
all these talking heads
telling you what you saw and telling you what you heard.
what their opinion is, whether it's conservative opinion or whether it's a liberal opinion or whether it's a moderate opinion, I don't need you to tell me how to receive what I just saw or what I just heard. And I think that the problem with people is a lot of people, because of that, a lot of people are tuning out. And that basically has consequences for things like this upcoming election, because a lot of people are tuning out and saying, I don't care what Larry Smith says.
Mhm.
I don't care what somebody else says. I tell people that from a media standpoint, as a media owner, I say, I'm like Fox. I have a niche. My niche is the African American community. That's what I'm going with.
Mhm.
There are other stories out there, but there's somebody out there that covers those stories.
Mhm.
My job is to cover the stories that relate to the African American community and the communities that I serve.
And its impact.
But to tell the story and see, the good part about what I do is that I get to tell it in long form. Whereas, you're talking about somebody who on television or on radio gets to tell it in 15 seconds on the soundbite.
Mhm.
But if you sit there and read the newspaper, whether it's my newspaper, whether it's any newspaper, you're going to get the long form of the story. And I think that's important, that people get the long form of the story, because I heard the governor say some things. The governor of the state of South Carolina has an environmental commercial. You handle it out.
Conservation.
Help me understand that.
If he were dealing with the environment, then he'd have to deal with pollution. He'd have to deal with what's going on with our waterways, and he's talking about conservation. He's talking about let's conserve, let's keep our beautiful woodlands and our wetlands and our grasses and our trees and the animals. And but what he's not talking about is the environment. He's not talking about climate change and impact. He's not talking about natural designs and those disasters and those kind of things that impact his constituency. And so that's easy. But what the point I was wanting to make was that when you have so many different interpretations of what's going on, and your news is coming in 15-minute sound bites, and you walk 15-second soundbite, and you walk into the polling place and you see these things to vote on, and it's like, I have no idea what this is. Vote yes or no to increase this sales tax. Vote yes or no so that we can keep more money into our budget for this or that, and people and have no idea what's being talked about, have no idea how to vote, because people are not being informed and educated on all the issues that are on the ballot.
And how do you suggest we handle that? Because that you make a very, very valid point. And I think one of the things that I like to see, especially from our churches, is a better education within our churches. Even if you got to take a sermon off and say, okay, today we're going to talk about the reasons why why you should vote. We're not going to tell you who to vote for. What you're going to tell, we're going to tell you what the issues and what the consequences and opportunities of those issues are. And you make your own decision about how you vote and where you vote and when you vote. But we need to make sure that you understand one thing that you do, and that is you vote.
Right.
And the second thing that you do is that you familiarize yourself with the issues and the candidates. And not what somebody says they are, But you look at their record. You look at if they've been in office. What is their voting record?
Right.
What did they vote for? What did they vote against?
And
what did they speak up against?
And you could go right online. And here's one of the things that I think is important. You could go right online. You could key in any candidate's voting record. And what you want to see is not just what they supported, but you want to see what they sponsored and co-sponsored. It's easy for someone else to put a bill up, and then when it's time to vote, I just raise my hand. But if you're there to really support and represent your constituents who voted for you and issues that are impacting them, then you should be writing legislation or co-sponsoring legislation and not just voting for legislation. That's one thing. And the second thing is that we need to educate people. So for example, on this ballot is having more money put aside for the reserve fund for the state. Well, we're putting more money aside for the state's reserve fund, and that reserve fund is covering what in the state? Is the reserve fund money to help maintain private schools versus public schools? Or I'm just giving you an example that people go in to vote and they have no idea what a reserve fund is. They have no idea what these funds are being reserved for, but they expected to vote yes or no. And that is a problem for our legislators and the political parties, where they should be making sure that people know what they're voting for, what they're voting against, and what specifically will these voter referendums, et cetera, mean for their individual lives.
Well, here's where I think I disagree with you.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you why I disagree with you. I think for too long you've handed our power over to our elected officials.
Mm-hmm.
And we, like you said, you expect them to educate the community.
Yeah, I said they should.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And for too long, we expected them to educate us on what's going on. You and I educate ourselves.
Right.
We make sure that we understand the issues and the concerns as they come out of whether it's the State House or the White House. And so the challenge basically is it's going to become incumbent upon our the citizens, the citizens of this city and the state and the nation, especially as African American voters. We're going to have to get smarter.
Mm-hmm.
And that means we're going to have to study our own issues and not have somebody bring something to us and say, sign this. Mm-hmm. And you don't know what you're signing, but you're signing something that might be signing your life.
You don't know what you're voting.
And that's basically what is happening when you're voting. Mm-hmm. If somebody comes and says, some knock on your door, or somebody comes and runs a campaign ad on television or in the newspaper or whatever, and they say, these are the real issues. These are the real concerns. Mm-hmm. You and I know that 90% of the real issues and the real concerns have not even been mentioned in this election cycle.
Absolutely.
And they climate control, like you said, and things like that have not been even mentioned in the society. Mm-hmm. Support for small business, support for closing the healthcare gap in South Carolina, support for a quality education for our young people, making sure that those people who got caught in the virus and the pandemic are able to catch up. And the money, the federal money is there for all of those things, but where's the conversation about all those things? And so, when you talk about what you hear is, like you said, we're going to keep the waterways clean, or I'm going to bring in gambling, I'm going to bring in marijuana. Mm-hmm. But what about the quality of life for people living in the state of South Carolina, where, first of all, South Carolina has a service economy. Mm-hmm. Somewhere in the neighborhood, a large percentage, I don't know what that number is today, but the large percentage of the people who work in South Carolina work in the service industry. They work at Myrtle Beach, they work in Charleston, they work in Greenville, they work in Market, they work in Columbia, they work in places where tourism is running rampant.
Right.
And ironically enough, Charleston
Mhm.
is an African American, is a someplace where people go because they want to experience what is an African American tourism experience.
Mhm.
And so a large portion of the money that people in Charleston make is from selling the African American slave culture and all of those things and the history of that slave culture and being able to tell that story to tourists.
Mhm.
And you see very few people in the African American community benefiting from that. So the question becomes, when you're talking about voting, when you're talking about issues that are important to the community, that's why it's extremely important for you to educate yourself,
Mhm.
not to have somebody else come and tell you, I stand for this, or I stand against this, or I stand, abortion is extremely important. And a woman's right to choose is absolutely important. The challenge basically is that there are other issues as well.
Mhm.
And a lot of the issues that are most important to African Americans and poor people in America is basically the fact that how do I gain an economic balance?
Mhm.
How do I gain progress? How do I move into what's being discussed now as the middle class? Because nobody wants to discuss the poor people in America. Nobody wants to discuss the underclass in America. And so they don't even use that language anymore. Even President Obama, when he was talking, and when he talks about conserving and growing the middle class.
Mhm.
And he doesn't talk about building.
Yeah,
He doesn't talk about the working class
Working class.
and who's people who made America. He doesn't talk about the working class, and he doesn't talk about the poor people in America. And it goes down to, and this is
Say
what,
because the poor people and a large portion of the working class don't vote. So they're not
that's
catering to them or
and,
their interests, but they don't vote. So they don't have to cater to them.
and the numbers prove that out. And I can't argue that. I can't dispute that at all. But the numbers prove that out. But it becomes incumbent upon them, if you're having hard times, the first thing you do is educate yourself.
Mhm.
Whether you're having hard times financially or socially or in your community in some form or fashion, first thing you do before you move forward, before you walk out that door and say, I'm going to do this, or I'm going to do that, or I'm going to start a business, or I'm going to get a job.
Mhm.
The first thing I got to do is educate myself. Isn't that the case?
Absolutely.
And so why not start with educating yourself about the political system
Mhm.
and about the people in the political system who represent you?
Mhm.
Because if you don't do that, then you're not going to be able to move forward with whatever plan or whatever strategy you have. So it comes down to basically, how do I educate me? Or do I say, okay, I'm going to, what was Missy Elliott said, the miseducation. I'm going to do this because my heart says do this.
Mhm.
Your heart told you to start your nonprofit organization.
Mhm.
My heart told me to start my publishing company. The first thing both of us did was we went and educated ourselves.
Like you
And
research it all over.
we went and educated ourselves on what it took for us to build an organization.
Mhm.
And I spent over a year in Thomas Cooper Library at USC when I was in Columbia, every day
Mhm.
studying
Mhm.
what people who have come before me had done and how they had done what they had done to succeed in this business.
Mhm.
And so the reality of it, and even then, I found myself behind the learning curve when I a year later when I started my business. But I had kind of put that myself out there to learn. And we have got to stop relegating our responsibility for knowing what's going on in our community from a political standpoint
And our life.
in our lives to somebody else.
Mhm.
We've got to say, okay, whose responsibility is it for me to know?
Mhm.
It's my responsibility to know. So you think because I'm ignorant to the fact that this candidate voted against the interests of my community, that's his fault.
Mhm.
that
No.
I didn't know that.
Mhm.
That's my fault.
Right.
That I didn't pay attention because, like you said,
Mhm.
you've got technology in your hand,
Mhm.
and you can look up anything anybody said and anything anybody has done in the last in the history of man, basically. And so the reality of it is that you're talking about people who say, well, I don't bother with politics because politics, ain't nobody all of them crooked and all of them is, uh, I am what you allow me to be.
Mhm.
And if you allow me to be, crooked,
Okay.
and I can make money being crooked
Mhm.
and take advantage of you and people like you, there are very few people in America who's not going to take advantage of that opportunity. I mean, there's some people who have a moral platform that won't take advantage of it. Very few people in America. One of my favorite shows on television these days is American Greed, and I watch it and I go, wow.
Mhm.
Some of the things I see on there.
You had money. Why did you stop there?
Yeah, Daddy, you stole for $50 million, and you wouldn't settle for stealing $50 million. You decided you were going to steal. You need to steal 50 million more, and that's when you got caught.
Mhm.
The reality of it is that as voters, whether it's in the midterm and November 8th, and getting out and vote and taking whatever, you got that big SUV.
Mhm.
You can hold 10 people and fill it up
Fill up and take
and take them to the poll.
and hold your elected officials.
And as you do that, before you do that, because right now you have a couple of days before you do that, all those people who come knock on your door, all those people you've seen on television, take a minute, take an hour, take a few hours if you need it, to basically say, look, let me look up who this person really is.
Mhm.
Let me see what this person really has done or what this person plans to do in the community. And, we've always said that the best way to determine what I'm going to do is to look at what I've done in the past. And so that basically that's basically a history lesson for us.
Mhm.
The reality of it is
Mhm.
take this time to know who you're voting for.
Mhm.
I'm not saying don't vote conservative. I'm not saying don't vote liberal. I'm not saying don't vote moderate. I'm saying vote first of all. Vote first and foremost and vote and take as many people. If there is 5 people in your house that are eligible to vote, make sure all 5 of those people are voting. If there's 5 people in your family that are eligible to vote, or 20 people in your family that are eligible to vote, make sure that those people are voting, because at the end of the day, that's what we need. We're at Americans at this crossroad where there are people who would rather you not vote.
Mhm.
And there are people out there who are doing things to block your vote, voter suppression in every form and fashion that you can imagine.
Mhm.
But don't let them win.
No.
Start to look at executing what your power is.
And that's where I was gonna go, because people have power. So let's take in the South, right? In the Southeastern United States of America, the majority of the working poor work in hotels, restaurants, and retail
Service
stores,
industry.
right? That's where they work, in the service industry. And so if you're working at a restaurant and you're making less than minimum wage, and you have to rely on tips in order to be able to feed your family, and then you have other people who are working for $7.22 or whatever it is, minimum wage in stores and making beds in hotels. Why would you not come together to find out which candidate will support, first of all, doing away with this antiquated system that goes back to slavery and feudal times, where if you serve a table, you did real good, that somebody may toss you a coin. Take that, witch, and buy yourself something. You know what I mean? An antiquated system based on injustice. And can you imagine if working class people came together in South Carolina or came together throughout the South to elect candidates that who are going to ensure that if I am working in a restaurant, I'm going to make at least minimum wage. And if I'm working in a restaurant, a hotel, or a retail establishment, that I should be making more than $7 and change, especially when we have inflation blowing up the price of everything. And I was struggling before inflation to make it. So I'm agreeing with you 100% that we should be educating ourselves about that these people who are running for office, when you hear that they're coming to town to a church or whatever for a campaign stop, don't sit in your homes. Don't be complacent. Don't be apathetic. Get out there and ask them, what are you going to do about the issues that impact you and your families the most? And when you find one that says they're going to do something to help bring you relief, then you go to the polls and vote for that person. And when they don't keep their promise, the next time you go to the poll, vote them out. It's just that simple. But people have power, but they're giving their power away by not being actively involved in the election process.
But do you think that's because they don't think that their vote matters,
Right.
and that their issues are ever going to be addressed in a real materialistic way?
Right. And they're hearing it from both sides. So, Donald Trump said the election was stolen from him. But when Hillary Clinton lost to Donald Trump, she said the election was stolen from her. And so they're hearing the same things to one degree or another from both sides, some of the same complaints. They're confused.
Well,
And then they hear them lifting up the same issues that we're going to help people who are in this condition, that condition. And when they get elected, they don't see any change in their lives. So they start to believe that voting doesn't matter.
well, I think it comes down to, yeah, I think a lot of people think that voting doesn't matter, and they need to be reminded that we've had so many elections that were won by one vote,
Mhm.
two votes in the last few years, even locally. And so the challenge basically comes: elections matter,
Mhm.
people matter. The question is, how are you spending your time? Are you spending your time hanging out? Are you spending your time at sporting events? Are you spending your time in church? Or are you spending your time with a combination of all the things that you like to do, but also all the things, some of the things that you need to do? You mentioned getting the workers of the world unite. There are people in America that will call you a communist for even but even saying that, because that's actually called a Marx statement.
That's because they never waited on tables like I did when there was a huge
I did too.
snowstorm in New York and they shut the city down for 3 days. When I looked at my less than minimum wage check, I knew that my lights were going to be cut off, and so that's because they've never lived in those
Well,
conditions.
and that's the whole thing. It's like there are people in this community who are majority oriented and from a racial standpoint, and who want to advise us as African Americans on how we should live our lives, and how we should be more like them. And the reality of it is, we as people who were brought to America in the base of a ship,
in the belly of a
in
ship.
the belly of a ship. Basically, we have our own value system. We have our own love for family and friends and relationships. I'm not a person who believes and that money is the ultimate goal in life. I believe at this particular stage, especially at this particular stage of my life, that he who dies with the most doesn't win. And so that's why I'm not into wealth ministries. I'm not really going to attend a church where the pastor is preaching wealth and prosperity. I'd rather my pastor preach to those who need their soul saved, and who need to be able to build themselves up and grow themselves and take care of themselves in a way that's going to make them more productive to themselves and more productive to the communities that they live in. And the reality of that is that you have people who are so caught up, and it's for a while it's bothered me. What is this? I'm going to make $10 million, and for some reason that's going to make me better than Leo. Why? No, if I have $10 million, that doesn't make me better than Leo. That means that I have $10 million, I might be able to do a lot of material things that I want to do. And so
and you might lose it all and be right back where it's up.
Well, it's not even about losing it all. The bottom line is, if you die tomorrow, or next week, or next month, or next year, or whenever, you can't take any of it. Which life is a zero-sum game.
Somebody else will wear your clothes, your car, live in your house, and perhaps marry your spouse.
And that's just reality. So I shouldn't concern myself with those things. What I can concern myself with is my spirit, my soul, and you know, what did I do while I was on this planet to serve people, not to be served, not to have the fancy car and the fancy house and all of the other stuff, and be able to travel and do all the things that we want, that most of us want to do. But what was my service to mankind? What did I provide? Even if what I provided, they didn't listen to me. I publish a newspaper every week. I try to tell the stories that I think are relevant to my community. I can't make anybody read my newspaper. I can't make anybody act on what they read in my newspaper, but I can provide that voice for them. How they use it, if they use it, and where they use it is completely up to them. And I think that, but you have to ask yourself, if you're not doing well by your standard, not by mine, but by your standard, if you're not doing well in life, you have to stop and ask yourself, what do I need to be doing different?
Absolutely.
What am I paying attention to the things that are going on around me? Am I seeing the opportunities that are available to me? Am I training, like we said a second ago, am I training for the opportunities that I want to have? You know, if I want to be a doctor, I got to go to med school. And you know, it's just that simple. And so the challenge basically is, you on a job where you're not.
I'll be a homeopathic health practitioner instead.
Well, the thing about it is,
and I'm confused that with being a doctor. Not everybody, but you know what I'm saying. This is what people get caught up into sometimes, rather than doing the work. And here's
they want a shortcut.
Yeah, they want a shortcut. This is what my wife and I were talking about actually this morning, is that there are alternate realities, right? They're alternate. Your reality is not my reality. You know, I might be happy being a carpenter, just designing cabinets and doorways and using my talents and skills and make enough money to take care of my family, and I'm perfectly happy and content. Someone else's reality is that they have to own a $500,000 home. They have to have $25 million that they have in the bank at all times. Somebody else's reality is that they're happy, you know, if they have Michael Kors bags and Rolex watches and that kind of stuff. So you can't base what your reality and your happiness and your concept of success with someone else. And that's what I think a lot of us have been sold a bill of goods, where we think that happiness and success is having a lot of gathered a lot of material things. So whether we're talking about gurus in the stock market, or a drug dealer, or somebody who made their millions or billions with social media, that the yardstick that we're music far too often for what makes people happy and successful is money. And that's what you were alluding to.
Yeah, no,
But
that's
that may not be my reality.
well, and that's not, that shouldn't be our reality.
Mhm,
But it's even simpler. You know, it's not just about making money. You and I are happy at
mhm,
what we do for a simple reason. It's different reasons, like you said, but in a lot of ways it's the same,
mhm.
and that is basically that we're doing what we want to do. We're enjoying,
Providing a service
we're
to
providing the service. We're serving the people that we want to serve.
people.
We're comfortable with who we are.
Mhm,
We're not trying to be somebody we're not.
right.
And we first invested the time in this, and every day we invest more time and more energy and more resources in being and enjoying the life that we built for ourselves. And it comes down to, I guess, for lack of a better way of putting it, it comes down to personal goals.
Mhm,
What do I want as an individual?
mhm,
Not what my mom and daddy want from me, not what my brothers and sisters want from me, not what people in my community want from me.
mhm.
What do I want to be?
Right.
You know, and at least she wanted to be a mechanic,
Mhm,
and her mother just couldn't see her being a mechanic. She was a very, very attractive young lady, and she was young, and her mother just couldn't see her daughter being a mechanic,
mhm,
and she was good at it, and she ended up giving up that opportunity to be a mechanic because her mother thought that was not a good job for a young lady.
mhm,
But if that's something that she wants to do,
mhm.
then why not?
Right.
Why would you say to her, okay, you can't be a mechanic because you're gonna be around men all the time and you're gonna get dirty and no, that's why they make soap for.
Mhm,
And and gamma say all the soap you need. So the reality of it basically is that as individuals, we have to learn to set personal goals.
mhm,
And as couples, we have to learn to set goals.
mhm,
And the reality of that is that means investing time in yourself
mhm,
and investing resources in developing yourself. And it means investing time in wherever your significant other is.
mhm. And developing,
And developing,
learning, educating, developing yourself.
and that is the missing link in our community. That is one of the missing links in our community that keeps us from maturing and from growing.
Mhm,
It is that we've done a pretty good job of educating our kids, and your kids and my kids. They're fairly good educated. The challenge basically is, I learned a long time ago when I try to hire somebody. I learned a long time ago, you can't teach drive and determination.
mhm.
You either have it or you don't.
Or loyalty, I like to say, and the willingness to learn.
Well, but if you don't come in the door with this drive, with a personal
Mhm.
drive and a personal determination,
That's the willingness.
but if you got those two things, and you're willing to learn, there's a really pretty good chance you'll succeed
Mhm,
in what you're trying to do. The
right.
reality of it is, and sometimes you exceed beyond whatever you ever thought you could
Mhm,
exceed. But the reality, I mean, achieve. But the reality of it is basically that people come and they do. You know, if you want a 9 to 5 and you want to go to work at 9 o'clock in the morning and get off at 5 o'clock in the morning, and you don't want to have anything else to do but enjoy your life and watch television or
mhm.
go to the club or whatever, go to church or whatever you might want to do, then that's that. If that's your life, that's your life.
It's your life.
But
But don't be bitter because you don't have something else.
exactly.
Don't hate on other people who have attained more than you because you didn't put the time and energy into position yourself.
And because at the end of the day, you are going to be the sum total of what you invest in yourself.
Mhm,
And it doesn't matter when you look at people who are successful, whether it's Jeff Bezos or whether it's some of the other billionaires out there. what have they invested in themselves?
Mhm.
You look at somebody like Jeff Bezos, and as an example, he's out there playing. In matter of fact, he's talking about buying the Washington football team at this particular point. But he's out there playing and having a great time. So it's a great time. He ended up having to get a divorce. But he's having a great time because he realized that to get to those billions that he got now, he had to invest over a long period of time, a lot of years, a lot of time, and a lot of resources, and a lot of days where he didn't get any sleep, and a lot of nights where he didn't get any sleep to get to this point where he is now.
Right.
He didn't wake up with a silver spoon in his mouth. And I think that's what some of us think, that, you know, if I'm walking down the street, maybe this silver spoon is gonna fall out the sky and hit me in the head, or something, bust me, or fall in my mouth or something.
Win the lottery.
I'm gonna win the lottery.
I say Jesus, Jesus, Jesus 3 times, and it will magically appear in my life.
You look at the lottery, and my son works for the lottery, but the reality of the lottery is that it's still at 2 billion, almost 2 billion now.
Almost 2 billion.
Almost 2 billion, at least it was a couple of days ago. And they'll tell you that people will play the lottery more when it gets up to $2 billion, even though their chances of winning go down tremendously because of the number of people playing. Their chances go down tremendously. You know, so the reality of it is there is no magic formula, but there's a solution, and the solution, part of the solution, is the vote. Right. And the vote, like I said, and with everybody that you can get to the polls to vote, to get out there and talk about this. But then go ahead
yourself, Larry. Because all right, I'm going to share with our audience something that I do every day. Right, I'll pick a subject or issue that I'm interested in, and what I use is this 30 by 30 approach, which means every day for at least 30 days, I will study an issue. 30 minutes for 30 days. Now my day is pretty busy and full like yours. So when I get up in the morning and I'm shaving, I'm brushing my teeth, and doing, brushing, combing my hair, that kind of stuff, eating breakfast, I may be listening to something, from an audio book or something real, not something people put together, but listening to something on YouTube or another channel. And I'll listen for 15, 30 minutes in the morning. If I don't have time to do 30, I'll do 15 minutes in the morning. When I get home, when I'm eating dinner, I'm doing something, I'm taking off my clothes, I listen for another 15 minutes. That's 900 hours of studying something a month. And I may decide that I want to do 2 months or 3 months. That's, if I do 3 months, that's 2,700 hours of studying one particular study. And when you do that, you gain some level of expertise and knowledge, so that when an opportunity comes or a door opens, you're prepared to step through that door or to seize hold of that opportunity. Now, that's not the same as going to college and that sort of stuff, but you're pretty much putting in close to the same number of hours that a student does at college. And if you're really studying real things, serious things when you learn, that's one of the ways to equip yourself. So when people tell me I don't have the time, I'm like, yes, you have the time. You just aren't prioritizing your time.
You're not prioritizing time. I think you're 100% right. The reality of the situation is that voting is paramount. The voting is
voting and being educated.
But educated, and that's all I was going to say. But being educated, not just about voting, but being educated about who you are and where you are and how you get to where you want to be. That if you take that combination and you put that combination together and you maintain good health practices, I guarantee you're going to be okay in life. The reality of the situation, though, I think some people will say, well, I'm a vote because my cousin voted, or my niece voted, or my mama voted, or my sister telling me I got to go out and vote, or blah, blah, blah. So I'm going to go out and vote. No, vote because you believe that you can make a difference. Vote because you believe that change is not just a catchphrase. That change is possible. That we've seen progress, even as African Americans in America, nowhere near the progress I think we need. But we've seen progress. We've seen the opportunity to grow. From my generation to my mother and father's generation, my sister and I were talking about this the other night. Is night and day. My parents, my father was an exterminator who lived off $60 a week, and so I understand clearly the difference between the opportunities that my mother and my father had, and the opportunities that I had, and the opportunities that my children have, and my grandchildren have, and Leo, the world has opened and to African Americans and Africans, people of African descent, people in diaspora, basically, and said, if you don't want to work, or if you don't like America, you can come get a job in Africa. You can come get a job in South America. You can come get a job in Canada, or you can get a job in London. You know, so the idea of limiting yourself, and this is what I'm learning from listening to some people on talk radio that I trust, that there is a movement out there. There's an opportunity out there that people are saying, you know, maybe I want to spend 2 years working in Africa. Maybe in South Africa, Egypt or someplace. I just want to spend 2 or 3 years working there. I don't want to give up my citizenship. I don't want to leave, but I want to live there.
And get a different perspective.
And enjoy a different perspective, but also to just have that experience. And I see more and more our young people who are taking advantage of opportunities like that. And the reality of it is that while, like I said, my parents and your parents growing up, we were very limited you know, they could rush barely travel across town. Let's more talk about across the country. And now you've got people who can travel. The world is literally our oyster. I mean, I can't give you a better example. I can't give you a better example than you going to Egypt. I mean, I mean, we didn't even, when we were coming up, we didn't know Egypt was on the map. We didn't know where that actually was. That was the actual place. Matter of fact, I heard somebody say the other day, and it was so funny. They said, you know, for a long time, all the us used to say, I don't care whether it's from here to Timbuktu. And nobody realized that Timbuktu in our community was an actual real place. In Africa. It was a real place in Africa. And so the challenge basically is, as we close, we need for you to understand that don't let Florence define you. Don't let the PD define you. Don't let the state of South Carolina define you. Don't let the United States of America define you. You define you and your relationship to the world, not just to these communities that you live in now, because you can go anywhere and do most of what you want to do if you plan, if you educate yourself, and you can get there. But if we're going to solve the problems that exist in America, one of the challenges is going to be for us to get out and vote. So on November 8th, which is Tuesday of this week, if you have not early voted, if you have not promoted to everybody in your family and everybody that you know that the importance of this election to our community, please go out and make sure they understand that there is no clearer statement than a voteless people or hopeless people. And in this case, if you don't vote, you won't have any hope.
Absolutely. And so yeah, I just want to echo what you said. Go out to vote and strive to be an educated voter, someone who will not be voting against his, her, or the community or your future generations to come, not voting against your interests, but voting in your interest, in your country's interest, and hold those who you vote for accountable. If they're not doing what you expect them to do, then you are under no obligation to vote for them the next time you see their name on a ballot. So, Larry, why don't you tell people how they can meet you? I mean, how they can contact you?
Oh, they should contact me by calling 843-667-1818. That is the Community Times newspaper, where they allow me to hang out. And they can reach me by email at dsmith7716@aol.com. To reach one of my websites, the one more prominent, is to go to www.scvillage-voices.com, and you'll be able to access our platform. But whatever you do, however you do it, just remember, as Reverend Neal has reminded us on a couple of occasions during this conversation, it's not just important to vote, but educate yourself on the issues and the concerns of our community, and educate yourself on the things that you want in life.
Absolutely. You can meet me. Why do I keep saying me? And you can reach me, Leo Woodbury, on our website, www.newalphacdc.com. You can email us at info@newalphacdc.com, or you can call us at our church, Kingdom Living Temple, 705 South Irby Street, the Church of the 21st Century. You can call there, and that number is 843-799-0740. And so until next week, this time, it's the Leo and Larry show that helps you get to know the things you need to know and go the places that you need to go.
So, vote.
Vote.
It's about what you know. It's about where you go. If you really want to know, it's the Leo and Larry show. It's about what you know. It's about where you go. If you really want to know, it's the Leo and Larry show. It's about what you know. It's about where you go. If you really want to know, it's the Leo and Larry show. It's about what you know. It's about where you go. If you really want to know, it's the Leo and Larry show.